Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy, and I'm here with Shane. And today we're going to talk about why we think there might be a battle going on between Texas and the deep state. So there's been a tremendous amount of unusual weather and fire and I know a lot of you guys do live in like the Houston area. It's just been one thing after another, and we're going to kind of go into a possible explanation for why it's been so bad in the recent years. Before we get started, if you have not subscribed yet, please do so before you leave. And like, comment, and share this video, and ring the notification bell because I know a lot of my videos aren't really getting promoted, especially videos such as this one. With that, I'm going to get started on some of the basics. I did a video about the Smokehouse Creek fire, which started on the 26th of February. And so, technically, the winter, there was a fire that destroyed 1,058,482 acres in the Texas Panhandle. Now, this is the biggest fire in Texas history. So this is a record. And we're going to go into other records later. But just to give this perspective, this fire destroyed more than the entire state of Rhode Island. This is a massive area. It's a lot of it is dry, but a lot of this land is used for cattle ranching. So a lot of the country's beef comes from this area, and a lot of cattle, along with the grazing land, was destroyed or killed or destroyed in this fire. Now, we're also going to go into the massive derecho that went through the Houston area, some really big hailstorms that came through, and Hurricane Beryl, and Shane's going to go into a little bit about the weather manipulation that was involved with those. But I'm going to focus on the fire, and a lot of this is going to be perspective, but it's pretty obvious. So one thing that we understand is that Amarillo has a plan for a smart city. So that's another reason we were suspicious of this fire being man-made. And there's also a big impact this fire has on the food supply, which, the globalists are trying to reduce the amount of food that we have access to here in the US. It's a technique that's been used in other countries, a lot of communist countries. What they do is they make food so scarce for their people that every day is a struggle, and they don't have time to focus on the bigger picture. So I do believe that has started to happen, and it's been happening. And this was a really big one for the globalist. Something really weird that happened, it snowed on the area, even though they claim that this was during a very hot period, but it snowed. So I'm not sure how they figured that. But I wanted to show the map here. This is the area that was burned. So this is a massive area. It's closer to the Oklahoma border. And many cows died here. But we did find a video. I saw the cattle that were injured, and I saw the ranchers talking about the injuries. The common theme that I saw was the cattle's eyes and their hooves were damaged. That's where they saw the most injury, to the eyes and the hooves. So that is a little weird. Their eyes were often kind of like burned out, and their hooves were so damaged that they couldn't walk, and a lot of them were put down because they were going to die anyways, and they're suffering so much. So I don't want to get into exactly why that happens. There are some ideas that we have, but I did want to point that out. And then here's the snow-covered burn area with a dead cattle there. And here is a house, two houses that were flattened. And this was not a highly populated area, but a couple of people, I think two people died, right? Reportedly.
Yes, two people died, including Joyce Blankenship, who was 83
Right.
years old. And the reason that she died was because her son was roadblocked from saving
Right. No one was there to rescue her, and she was found in her house, I think,
her.
deceased.
Yeah.
And there was another one, but there weren't a
There
lot of
was
reported deaths.
there was another one, but the name was not released at the time.
Okay, so two officially deceased people during this tragedy. So something that made me kind of think a little bit deeper into, whenever I hear about these crazy events and these record breaking, weather events, I try to understand like why Texas, why this area, why now? And I remember hearing a little speech from the governor, Greg Abbott. Now, he's been the governor since 2015. He's been in position for, right? Is it 15? Over
I
eight
believe so.
years. He's been the governor of Texas. Now, a little information about Governor Abbott. He's actually permanently in a wheelchair because he is paralyzed on the lower body. And the way he got paralyzed is it was 1984. He was a young man. He was jogging, and because of a storm, a tree fell on him, and that's what injured him. And he has not walked since. So I'm going to play a video of him talking. And it really struck me. And I watch a lot of politicians talk about things like this, especially like Governor Green. But I just felt a very strong sense of hurt in his voice, and I just sense, unlike a lot of other officials in his position, he really had a strong sense of sincerity giving this message, and I'll let you guys hear it. And he's talking about the fire.
I have witnessed and observed some extraordinary damage in our state. It could be caused by hurricanes or tornadoes, and frequently when you see the aftermath of that damage, there's some semblance of a structure that is still there. When you look at the damages that have occurred here, it's just gone, completely gone. Nothing left but ashes on the ground. Some early, and I will categorize as premature assessments, show that there are about 400 to 500 structures that have been destroyed. There's no way to say for certainty that's going to be the final number because there's still the ongoing assessment process.
All right, so that was him talking about the fire. And I know I don't know a ton about him, and I know a lot of my viewers are from Texas, so please sound off in the chat what you think of Governor Abbott. I'm sure he's not a saint, but I don't know, there's something about the way he said it. I did sense that he was being honest and sincere, and that he has a deep concern for the people he represents. Now let's look at our president talking about this fire.
If you fly over these areas that are burned to the ground, you'll see in the midst of 20 homes that are just totally destroyed, one home sitting there because it had the right roof on it. And anyway, since I took off.
So now that we know he does have probably dementia, Parkinson's, or something along those lines, I don't think he was supposed to say the house with the right roof. And I did notice he does that. Oh, but anyways, that's usually a sign that he says something he wasn't supposed to say. And so
That's how he
I
tries to
wasn't
change
sure
his
if he
number.
was trying to give a message at the time, but I'm pretty confident he was not supposed to say that. And so I'm pretty sure President Biden is aware of the globalist agenda. He's very pro-UN, pro-WEF. Oh, also, Governor Abbott, yes, is officially a member of the WEF. And so you would think he is in on this plan to depopulate and destroy land, but I don't know. I do think he's at battle with the forces going on, and I'll explain a little bit. I'll go into that a little bit right now. So I think most people are aware that there's a serious situation at the border, the southern border in the U.S. So the southern border does hit a pretty big part of Texas, and there are a lot of checkpoints there, but it's pretty much an open border. People in the U.S., for the most part, if you ask them, they will say they don't want that. They don't want illegal crossings into their state. And I think Texas felt very strongly for that as well. And I do think Governor Abbott is genuinely concerned about the high amount of illegal immigration coming through to his state. Now, he started 3 years ago, he started a program called Operation Lone Star, and that was to address the border problem, so the border crossings. So, and this is considered a success. You know, we don't hear about this because this is what the deep state, the globalists don't want. You know, they want that open border. They don't want people being stopped there. But he is one of the only governors that has done something in a very aggressive way and has put a lot of resources into this program. And I have some numbers here. Since the beginning of Operation Lone Star, and that was started on March 6th of 2021. So yeah, over 3 years, there have been 513,000 migrant apprehensions, 44,000 criminal arrests, and something he did, he actually bused over 119,000 immigrants to sanctuary cities. So cities such as New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. So I don't think that is the reason why we have this open border policy. I think the people in charge want more crossings, and I believe they want them to settle in Texas. Texas is historically a red state, and Texas has a very large amount of electoral votes. So whatever side wins Texas has a much stronger possibility of winning the election. And there are a lot of blue sections of Texas, and I do think they wanted to get Texas to turn, at least purple, eventually blue. But he is taking people that would, I guess, vote Democratic out of his state. So, yeah, there are, I guess, a dispute between the United States Department of Justice and this program, the Operation Lone Star. I'll leave a link down below. You can go on Wikipedia and read all about it. But I do want to bring that up because, we're all saying, like, no one's doing anything about the border. Well, Greg Abbott is one of the only people that I know that is taking an aggressive step at solving the problem and helping his state deal with all the illegal crossings. Now, okay, I think that was the main thing I wanted to bring up. That is my perspective. I do think Texas is getting picked on, and more weather events are being sent to Texas. I do understand it is on the Gulf, and so they're very prone to hurricanes and storms, and Texas is a big state, so they're more likely to have weather events hit their state. But when we talk about Hurricane Beryl, Shane, you could talk about how it basically hit land, came back, and hit Houston, right? Is that what happened?
Well, it strengthened as it reached land, and it continued to strengthen for the next hour or two as it moved inland towards Houston. So Houston actually did get some of the worst of it.
Right. And it wasn't expected to. I think people thought it would hit Mexico or it would weaken by the time it hit the south of the US, but it managed to get to they said category one, but I think officially it is a category two because the winds were so strong. And considering all the problems that this area has had, a hurricane is probably the worst thing that could have happened. They're still out of power. I think over 1 million residents in the Houston area still don't have electricity, and it's been some time. So with that, I'll let Shane go into the derecho and the hurricanes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go back first.
Okay.
So I want to go back to the fire actually, and I want to talk about where it started. So this fire started just northeast of Amarillo or Amarillo, however you pronounce that, which is in the panhandle of Texas. Now, it's very near this map. So this is the smart city map for Amarillo, Texas. And you can see the northeast section in the blue is an area to be redeveloped for manufacturing and logistics. And this is very close to where the fire started. And so it looks like the fire might have cleared some of the area for this zone, but then it continued on into the panhandle where we saw it kill those thousands of beef cattle. Now, this is actually significant because a lot of the fire damaged areas also have plans for smart cities. And this Amarillo Smart City is part of the Texas Transportation Plan, their 2040 statewide transportation plan. Now, a lot of places, so this is the Texas wide plan, which includes not just Amarillo, but it also includes Houston. Houston has what's called a transit oriented development corridor, which is just like the ones we've seen in the state of Hawaii and other places that have experienced these types of fires. Now, one of the main things that sticks out is the walkable places and pedestrian, bike paths and things like that, because they're trying to discourage automobile use while encouraging more walking and biking and things like that. And a lot of these places also have rail projects as well, like we've seen in Honolulu and now in Paradise, California, as well as Oroville. Okay, so that kind of covers like some of the aspects of the fire. But then Texas has basically been under all forms of weather warfare for the last 5 months or so. So just 5 months ago was the fire. Just 2 or 3 months ago was the derecho. And since then, they've had hailstorms. Now, I know everything is bigger in Texas, and these are hailstones that are somewhat large compared to most of the country, but this is actually kind of normal for Texas. It's not unusual to have hailstones of this size. But recently, areas like Lubbock, Texas, have had record breaking hail, including this hailstone that came through the roof of a house and measured over 6 inches in diameter, which is like larger than grapefruit. And it's actually, they were calling it CD size hail. So Texas is having unprecedented and record-breaking weather patterns, not just record-breaking fires, but record-breaking hail, as well as record-breaking winds, which brings me to the derecho of May 16th, 2024. Now, NOAA had predicted high winds for this area ahead of time, and their prediction was strangely accurate because this is exactly the area that experienced the highest winds. So on May 16th, a storm system moved through Texas and over the corner of Louisiana out into the Gulf, and it produced very damaging straight line winds, especially in the city of where 110 mile an hour wind gust was recorded in downtown Houston. Now, downtown Houston received the greatest severity of damage, and a lot of people thought that it was a tornado, but the only tornado that was anywhere near Houston was actually northwest of this area. And so all of the damage we saw in downtown Houston was actually from straight line winds. Now, Wikipedia was calling this the 2024 Houston Derecho. And this is the only the second time I had heard that word before. I had heard it the previous fall while someone was talking about rare storms and how often they happen. And these types of storms used to be rare. They would only happen every so often. Now, what classifies a derecho? So, a derecho is a storm that is more than 60 miles wide and has a damage path that extends for more than 250 miles. The wind gusts along the damage path of at least 58 miles per hour, and several wind gusts are of 75 miles an hour or greater. Now, this storm that hit Houston traveled over 400 miles, and it was well over 60 miles wide and had gusts of 110 miles an hour, as we saw. We did a video on this back then at the time, so you can see this video if you go and check it out. But a lot of the damages that happened were almost tornado-like. You see this brick wall of like a parking structure has been completely knocked out, and there's bricks all over the place, even piled on the car in the background. It also toppled many large trees that had been standing for over 100 years in some cases. Now, I want to talk about the rarity of derechos and how often they actually happen. So this was the second time I had heard the term, and so I went to Google Analytics to see like how popular this was as a search term. And the week of May 16th to the 21st was the most popular time of all. You can see that the search terms were 100% of their peak on May 21st of 2024, following the Houston Derecho. But I scrolled it back to see the overall history of the search term, and it looks like that first appeared in around 2010 was the first time anyone had really searched this term. But then there was a previous spike in August of 2020, which was the week of August 8th, 2020, when there was a derecho that went through the Great Plains states. And so people had probably never heard that word before, and they started searching for the term. And it remained relatively unpopular of a search term until the recent derecho in Houston, Texas. All right, so now I want to talk about some more anomalies that we've seen, not only with the derechos, but as well as other strange wind and weather events as well. So, the following week after the Houston derecho, I was paying particularly close attention to the weather, and I followed a channel called Max Velocity, who covers all the storms as they happen. He usually goes live and he shows radar views and everything like that. But this particular derecho was May 19th in the state of Kansas. And we can see just downwind from Dodge City and actually upwind from Wichita, Kansas, which is not in this view. You can see that the radar reflectivity is returning a very parallel bands of what appears to be precipitation as they approach the Wichita area. Now, this is very unusual phenomenon that we don't usually see. However, we did see something similar over Maui the evening before the fire, and it even continued during the fire. However, we are missing some satellite data from that day. Now, meteorologists tend to term these cloud formations as atmospheric gravity wave clouds, but there could actually be a different cause for these. So they say that they're caused by mountain ranges and things like that that cause disruptions in the airflow. But we've seen this quite often over the ocean, as we did in Maui, and also with hurricanes as well. We'll see patterns like this out of the ocean where there is no contoured terrain to generate any sort of wind pattern. Now, there was a video done by Into Thin Air where he goes into what these really are. So these are actually frequency waves that are generated by NEXRAD and Doppler radar towers. Now, the weird thing about these frequency waves is they seem to be standing in place. They're like standing waves that don't move as the clouds move through them, but the clouds, as they move through these waves, will actually bunch up where the wave crests are, and they will dissipate where there's a trough. So Doppler radar towers are actually very powerful microwave transmitters. So radar is actually in the microwave range, and they've discovered that microwaves can actually interfere with each other and create patterns like we've seen before. So this looks very much like an interference pattern between two beams. And so I did a little bit of research, and I found out that there are things that can produce patterns like this. So what this is actually a diagram of a linear array. And 5G is also a phased array of linear arrays like this. So I'll show this again. So what this is these separate elements in this array all fire at a different timing, but the timing is lined up so that they will constructively interfere with each other and produce what these are called plane waves. Now these plane waves emanate parallel to each other, but perpendicular to the direction of travel. So this is actually produced most likely by the interference between multiple beams. However, phased arrays like 5G and Doppler radars don't necessarily require a second transmitter because the phased array can actually interfere with itself and create these patterns with a single array. Okay, so that covers some of these strange wind patterns that we've seen in the Derecho, but I also want to show some of the things that have happened over the water. So while we do have land-based radar transmission towers, we also have very highly advanced sea-based transmission towers that are very much more massive and very much more powerful than the average land-based tower. The average land-based tower is about 750,000 watts or 750 kilowatts. However, the power levels on these equipment are somewhat classified, and so we can only speculate as to their power. But those have been seen in Hawaii, in the Honolulu Harbor, just after the Hurricane Dora, which was blamed for the winds on Maui. But the winds on Maui did show those quote unquote atmospheric gravity waves that were actually probably interference patterns. Now, another thing that has also been covered before is Bruce Douglas talked about these atmospheric aerosol injectors. And this is a land-based version of such a device, which they do have throughout the United States. But Bruce Douglas claims that they also have sea-based versions of this that are on ships as well. Okay, so now that brings me to Hurricane Beryl. Now, Hurricane Beryl was a record-breaking hurricane, not just for the month of June, but for the month of July as well, because it underwent several periods of rapid intensification. So it was at one point Category 5 hurricane, and then it was eventually downgraded to Category 4 and then Category 3 before striking Jamaica. And then by the time it reached the Yucatan Peninsula, it was only a Category 1. So I want to go over the satellite data that I looked up for Hurricane Beryl, and it appears to, just like Hurricane Otis and the Maui disaster, the satellite data is missing sections of data. So here we can see there's 1 hour and 10 minutes missing. Here's 3 hours and 10 minutes missing from June 30th. There's 3.5 hours missing from July 2nd. And it just keeps on going. There were many, many hours, several times, that were missing from this hurricane. And it seemed to have happened during the periods of the most rapid intensification. Now I'm going to share a video here that kind of, it's a loop of Hurricane Beryl, and I've added the gaps that were missing in here. So I'm going to show you this now. Okay, so this is Hurricane Beryl as it's heading towards the Windward Antilles Islands. And now you'll notice there's 1 hour and 10 minutes missing. And then there's 3 hours and 20 minutes missing. When it comes back, it's now rapidly intensified Category 3. And as it approaches the Windward Antilles Islands, it goes dark again and rapidly intensifies where we can't see it. And then it's Category 4 as it strikes Barbados and Grenada in the Windward Antilles Islands. You can see it splashes, so there's a side splash to the Leeward Antilles as well. And then there's more time missing. And then it hits Jamaica. Now it's hitting Jamaica, and then it crosses the Cayman Island, and then it takes a beeline straight for Cozumel, and it hits Cozumel directly head on. Now, as it crosses the Yucatan Peninsula, it goes over land, encounters dry air and wind shear, and it almost dies. But then you can see there's some injected convective activity on the outer bands that almost bring it back to life, but then it starts to die out again, and you see more injected convective activity that tries to bring it back to life, and it starts to intensify. And conveniently, this time is also missing. There is over 8 hours total of missing time right before it made landfall in Texas. And so this is the end of the 8 hours coming up here. And now It's a re-intensified, once again, hurricane, and then it makes landfall and continues to intensify over land until it passes Houston, and then there's another hour missing, and then it continues on as a tropical storm. Now, we've seen this before with Hurricane Otis, where the period of rapid intensification, it was a record-breaking period of rapid intensification for Hurricane Otis, and that data was missing. And then each and every rapid intensification of Hurricane Beryl was also missing data. And I don't believe that that's a coincidence.
And in general, once a hurricane hits land, it is supposed to weaken, right? Not intensify.
Yes, hurricanes, usually when they reach dry air or they cross land or they encounter wind shear, it will weaken the hurricane. And Hurricane Beryl encountered all three of those when it crossed the Yucatan Peninsula. It was over land, so it wasn't able to soak up extra evaporated water. And there was wind shear and dry air, and all of those almost killed the storm. But then once it got back out over the Gulf, we saw some strange convective activities that were covered up by the missing data. Now, this hurricane, once it struck land, it continued to intensify for about an hour or two before it finally started to weaken again. And it was classified as a Category 1, but the hurricane might be reclassified in the near future, and I have a video that's going to show why.
A major heat dome that formed over the Atlantic Ocean after Hurricane Beryl. This is also very concerning and not normal, and I believe that the Antarctic anomaly is responsible for this. That's why we saw this major hurricane come off the West African coast and become the first major hurricane we've ever seen in the month of June, and then broke records for the month of July as well. So all the evidence we've been posting about for months now is completely coming together and showing that the Antarctic anomaly has been doing exactly what we said. It's a type of frequency technology that is causing crazy weather events all over different continents, and eventually the heating of the oceans and very strong hurricanes. And it's only just begun. This is the beginning of the season. We still have well over 1.5 million customers in Texas without power right now. There are crews upon crews just sitting in parking lots waiting for direction from the government, which is completely insane. Many of these counties in here have not even began the work of restoring power to these poor people. And this is why I've been saying and screaming from the rooftops that this was not a Category 1 storm. This was at least a Category 2. And I very much believe that they will recategorize this storm in the near future to say that yes, it was indeed a Category 2 or even a 3 that made landfall and not a Category 1. And you can verify this by storm chasers that were on the ground recording well over 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds before landfall even happened, as well as your screen right now showing a 130-mile-an-hour wind gust.
Okay, so yes, it showed 130-mile-an-hour wind gust with over 100 miles an hour of sustained wind, which is not a Category 1. That's at least a Category 2, if not a Category 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if Beryl gets upgraded in the near future based on the damage assessments from the National Weather Service. All right.
And then I don't know if people were privy to that Antarctic anomaly, that dark blob that came out from, what's that island in the southern?
It's called Bouvet Island or Bouvet Island. It's just north of
that heat, right?
It's just north of Antarctica, and we've seen this anomaly come from that location several times in the past. And it seems to produce extremely low pressures and extremely high temperatures that spread through the ocean. And that seems to be what's causing the heating of the Atlantic Ocean. And that's all I have for today. So back to you, Tracy.
So yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for those of you who are here for the premiere. And I don't know, I feel like I didn't make my point clear enough. I think, and I do think the explanation for these weather events is a lot more complicated than what I'm saying. The way I think of things in general, a complicated problem usually doesn't have a simple answer. It's usually a complicated answer, and most people don't want to hear that. I would say the average person wants to hear one explanation, like this happened because of this. All right, just get rid of that and that won't happen. As far as why Texas is getting these extreme weather events and fire, I don't think it is solely because of the governor. For all we know, he's a member of the WEF. He might be acting in that clip, and he might be all for that. That's not my perspective. That's not what I think is going on here. I do think there is a battle going on between Texas and the deep state or the globalist. And I do think part of that might have to do with the actions of Governor Abbott. And if you guys are more familiar with him, let us know what you think of Governor Abbott. He's not my governor, but just from doing this work and seeing him speak, I do feel he wants to say more. He's not allowed to. He can't, say the D word or the weather thing, but I think he knows a lot, and he does not want this happening to his people. So that's kind of what I wanted to sum it up with. So is there anything else, Shane, because you're the one that was like, maybe there's a war going on with Texas.
Well,
And I was
yes,
like,
it does seem
"You know
like
what?"
there's a weather war on Texas, and there probably are some aspects of it being personal against Governor Abbott because of his Operation Lone Star. But then there's also a collective aspect of it too, because this does only happen in NATO countries and mostly in blue states. And it seems like they are also trying to turn Texas a blue state. And it's a little bit of a collective war as well as an individual one of, like, you could just, I guess, narrow it down to liberals versus conservatives in a way. But it's not just all liberals. It's more of the deep state liberals that are behind NATO and weather warfare and directed energy and things like that.
Yeah, and Texas is different from any other state. They have a lot more private land in comparison to what other states, like a lot of other
And they
states
do
have more
sell,
state.
they do sell state land to private buyers as well.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I guess that's gonna do it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and like, comment, and share this video. Let as many people know, and I guess we'll see you all next time. Bye.